Hello friends. We are officially beginning on some of our postpartum meal prep. If you are new here, my name is Bree. I will be 24 weeks pregnant here in a few days, and the time is going by way too quickly. So we are getting some meal preps kind of done and taken care of. I'm going to be taking you along this whole journey. I will not be doing big batch cooking days, or at least not a lot of them. I am trying to do a bunch of little things at a time to make my life more manageable. I currently work full-time, my husband works full-time, so we make do with the time that we have. And so today's first meal prep is canning up some ground beef. I have 10 pounds of ground beef here, I believe. Some of this is still a little frozen. That's totally fine. But we needed to clear out space in our freezer. My husband is currently elk hunting. Elk season starts tomorrow, so fingers crossed we get an elk. That would be wonderful. But I currently have 2, 4, 5, 7. Now, okay, so I have 9 pounds of ground beef. I did use a pound last night for dinner. What we are going to do is we are going to get our meat browning on up. So I'm going to walk you through this process of canning ground beef, getting some shelf-stable meat. This is going to be a wonderful convenience item for Reed and I in our postpartum chaos, is what I'm calling it, because this is our first child. We don't know what to expect. And what I've been told is be prepared to not know what you're doing. So if I can help myself and limit the overwhelm, doubtful, and at least have some easy things to reach for to feed us, that's my goal. So I want some shelf-stable, pre-cooked ground beef on hand, so that way on our exhausted days, because there's gonna be many, we can just reach for this ground beef and we can turn it into spaghetti, lasagna, tacos, some sort of skillet meal. But we have options and variety, and I would like to have that option on hand. And so I've got my 2 skillets on like a medium heat right now. We are going to get all of this ground beef into these 2 skillets. And we're gonna get it mostly browned on up. Oh, okay. Oops. So this is just over probably 9 pounds of ground beef. All of the packages were at about 1 pound. Some might have been just a little under, some might have been just a little bit over, but we have about 9 pounds of ground beef. So that's gonna make roughly 9 pints. I'm going to can in pints, not quarts. It is still, again, it's just me and my husband and the little one that we are growing. The little one's not gonna be eating any of this meat probably for at least another 9 or 10 months. We'll see what happens and what Reed and I plan on doing. So I have 2, 4, 6, I have 8 pints already washed and cleaned. I have the last pint in the dishwasher, freshly cleaned as well. So let's go ahead and so that stuff is already nice and prepped. This is gonna take a minute. It's not going to be a fast process because I am bulk cooking this ground meat. But what you want to do when you can ground meat is you do have to pre-cook it. Ground meat cannot be raw packed like chunks of meat, cubes of meat can be, because of the way that ground meat cooks. If you were to put raw ground meat into a pint or a jar for canning, as it cooks, it's all gonna cook together, and then that makes it too dense, and that's why it's not safe to can, is it becomes too dense and it can't reach the proper temperature to ensure its safety, is what are the guidelines around that. So that is why we are pre-cooking our ground meat, is because it has to be per standard. It does not have to be completely cooked, but it does have to be mostly cooked, and then the canning process will finish it off. You just don't want the meat to start sticking together as it goes through the canning process. Another disclaimer is ground. Whenever you can meats, especially just like this is just being canned by itself, I'm not turning it into anything right away. I'm not making like a meal in a jar type of situation. I'm just giving myself the gift of pre-cooked meat. Is that it does change the flavor of the meat a little bit, and so you do want to make sure. I prefer to use my pre-cooked ground meats in things like spaghetti, lasagna, soups, so that way the change in flavor isn't as obvious. You can also season the meat before you put it in the jar or as you're putting it in the jar, or you can season the meat after the fact. Because I have no predetermined what we're going to do with this ground meat, I'm not going to season it. I'm just going to let it cook, and we are going to can it unseasoned, and I will make sure whoever pulls it off the shelf to use it, that it will need to be seasoned for whatever dish it is that we are making. The other thing about this is a pressure canning recipe. You cannot water bath can meat unless you are interested in rebel canning. That is not something that I am going to encourage you to do or tell you to do, but you can make whatever decisions you want. You are an adult. And so this will be a pressure canning recipe, and anytime you cook meat, it has to be processed for a minimum of 90 minutes, an hour and a half, or correction, because we're doing this in pints, it's 75 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes. Typically, when I do meals in a jar, it's always in quarts, and so it has to process for 90 minutes or an hour and a half. Some of these 1 pound blocks of meat were still frozen. I pulled these out on Saturday evening, and it is Tuesday evening. So these have been in my fridge thawing for a couple of days. But because I had them in that bowl, kind of stacked on top of each other, the stuff that was at the bottom didn't thaw as well. I should have thought to rotate it, but I completely forgot. We've been rather busy around here. So the other reason we needed to clean out the freezer, or I should say, if you don't have a canner, the other solution to kind of giving yourself the grace of a convenience pre-cooked meat is you can freeze this. So you can pre-cook all of this meat and then re-portion it out into 1 pound or quart bags or something like that. And then you can put it in the freezer and you still have pre-cooked meat. And all you have to do is thaw it and reheat it. So that option is there for you as well if that's what you would like to do. I am trying to conserve space in our freezers at the moment. One, because it is elk season. Reed is currently elk hunting, or he will be elk hunting tomorrow. And if we get an elk, I want to make sure there is ample space for us to put it in the freezer. From there, after elk season, hopefully we get an elk, and then we will make do afterwards and we'll figure things out. But after the fact, we are going to go ahead and slowly start accumulating freezer meals. So I want to get some just ready to go meals that we can pull out of the freezer. We don't have to assemble it. We don't have to do anything other than throw it in the oven, throw it in the crock pot, throw it in the Instant Pot. I want those convenient items just to make our lives a little easier. On top of the fact that Reed and I on top of the fact that I'm growing a human being, Reed and I are endeavoring on some interesting life changes. Very exciting things. Nothing sad, nothing scary, but it is different. And so as we navigate life changes that are coming up, on top of having a baby. I would like as much convenience on hand as possible. Life is about to be overwhelming enough without having to worry about what's for dinner. So, if you have any kids and you did any postpartum meal prep, I would love to know what you prepped, because I'm still trying to figure out ideas on what I would like to make and have ready to go. I do have a running list of things that I am considering and eyeballing, and I will be taking you along with. But please let me know down in the comments below. I would love to hear what you did or what others did for you. Like if somebody blessed you with a food train after your little one was born, or if you helped somebody with a food train after their little one was born. I would love to know about it. So please share in the comments your thoughts, your experiences, what helped you out the most, because the garden is ramping down and we are about to be in the kitchen a lot more. All right, so both of these are done. The meat is cooked. And so now we're gonna put our pressure canner over here. We are likely gonna have to double stack. We're gonna go ahead and get some water put into our canner. We're gonna put about 2 inches of water in the bottom, and then we're gonna get this heating up. The jars are going to be hot packed, so the jars will be decently hot, which means we want to put them into hot water, not cold water, to prevent the jars from being shocked and breaking. And once I get this canner filled, we gotta feed Boots. We have our canner full, about 2 inches full, not completely full, of water. So we are gonna get this turned on and we're gonna get the water heating up. I also went ahead and put a little bit of oil around the bevel right here. That is instructions from the manual that came with my pressure canner. I have an All-American pressure canner, and it is a 21 quart. So it can hold 7 quarts, or I can stack between 18 and 19 pints, depending on if I'm using regular or wide mouth jars. Right here, I have our meat. I'm actually going to use this little sieve to go ahead and drain off the liquid. That is necessary per the canning instructions to help limit the grease. And we want to fill these jars to 1 inch of headspace. Okay, it's looking like we are gonna need more than the jars that we got, which is totally fine. All right. So I've got a clean spoon here. I'm gonna go ahead and try and evenly distribute some of this meat to allow for us to be at a 1 inch of headspace. We did end up filling 12 wide mouth pint jars. So the light that's right here died and I can't find my other lights and I can't find a replacement light for that. So I apologize for the lighting. Let's take a look. Prepping meat. So ground or chopped meat. Fill hot jars with pieces. Add boiling meat broth, tomato juice, or water, leaving 1 inch of headspace. And you could always add salt if we wanted to. So let's see how much hot water we have here. We'll just do hot water today. I'm gonna need more hot water, I think. Should have been a little more prepared on the waterfront. That's fine. Good thing we have an electric kettle. It says we could do broth. All of my broth is canned. It's also all downstairs, and I don't feel like going downstairs and grabbing it and then heating it all up. The water's gonna be much quicker. Okay, now we're gonna use the debubble tool. We're gonna make sure we get any air bubbles out. This will also affect headspace, so we're gonna do this before we go ahead and measure headspace. Okay, let's go through and measure. We now need to go through with the cloth and clean all of these rims. We're probably gonna have to do this twice because this ground beef had some grease, and the grease between the rim of the jar and the lid can prevent a seal. And so we're using vinegar to help cut through the grease. To make this easier and to ensure a seal, because this was a labor of love a little bit, not nearly as labor intensive as our tomatoes, but we still don't want any failures if we can prevent it. With the All-American pressure canner, it does not have any gaskets. It has a beveled edge on the inside of the canner and on the lid. And when the canner makes a seal, it is because those beveled edges line up beautifully, and that is what makes the seal. That's what makes this really unique as a canner. So what I'm doing here is I'm going ahead and I'm making sure that the gap up between the lid and the canner is the same all around the canner, so that way the lid and the canner can come together and make a seal to build pressure. So now we're gonna wait for the pressure canner to come up to pressure. I live at above 4,000 feet elevation, and so I need to can at 15 pounds of pressure, which on the dial puts it at 15 PSI. So that's, if you do a dial or a weighted gauge, I have a weighted gauge and the dial is just here to, like, for confirmation. But we're gonna let this come to pressure. We're gonna have a solid spout of steam coming out of our pressure canner. Once this solid steam, it's been a solid stream for about 10 minutes, then we will put the weight on, and then once the weight starts to jiggle, we know we are at pressure, and then the hour and 15 minutes of processing time begins. So I'll show you what this looks like when we're done. Good Morning. It is the next day. I am getting ready for work. I'm about to make breakfast. All of these jars have cooled since last night. I got them out of the canner at about 9:30. So they've been on the counter for almost, I'm gonna say 9 hours at this point. And once the jars cool, in my experience, if they haven't sealed, they're not going to. So we have one failure. This looks like the jar that did have some siphoning, so that makes some sense because there's probably some grease now between the lid and the jar, and that prevented it from sealing. However, all these others do seem to have sealed. If you can see this little layer, it's not super thick, it just looks like it is, but thank goodness we strained off that grease, or there would be significantly more in this jar. So all I'm gonna do is once I get home tonight, I don't have time to do this now, the jars that have all sealed, I'll take the rings off, I will wash them, get them labeled, and then they can go into our long-term storage. This is gonna go into the fridge, and I will either take it with me. This weekend I'm going into the mountains, or I will just leave it in the fridge until we get back and we will do something with it. Then alternatively, I could also freeze this. There is enough headspace for it to freeze. I just don't know at the moment what I want to do, but it cannot sit on the counter any longer because it didn't seal. If you are interested in more shelf-stable meals, shelf-stable food options, I will link those videos here and here. I have a couple of shelf-stable meal options and videos that I have done. I love the convenience of having a meal already prepped and ready to go, either in the freezer or on the pantry shelf. So please go click on those and enjoy. If there is something that you enjoy canning, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And have a great rest of your day. I'll see you the next time we're in the kitchen. Bye, friends.